listening. And here we were 4 weeks ago in this very same studio. You said, yep, we're fine, levels are good, reservoirs are well stocked, supplies for the next month or two we haven't got a problem with, we've invested in the infrastructure, etc., etc. A month later?
Yep, and I was right at the time. We had full stocks in May, we got through June, and everything was fairly normal. What's changed is the long-term weather forecast. What we're looking at now is Sulby's still 60% full, West Baldwin is still 58% full. Now, United Utilities in the UK brought in their hosepipe ban at 54% when it dropped to that level. We didn't think it was going to be a major problem. We thought the stocks would hold out, and I'm still confident they will. But what we're now looking at is the long-term weather forecast and when we're going to get decent rain to top these up. And that's where the concern is, that when we have the advice from the weather experts to say this is an exceptional summer, this period of very dry, hot weather is going to last far longer than anyone anticipated when we were singing the praises of the TT.
What are the prospects, Adrian? Let's get that context in. What are we looking at in the months ahead?
Indeed, yes. Well, we had that short-term vision that we were all hopeful, as you say, that let's get the TT in, and that's important to the economy of the Isle of Man, and we enjoy our weekends. And then we start focusing on more local issues, like for farmers, and we talk to a lot of farmers all the time about their issues of lack of rainfall and when's the next rainfall due. And one of the things that hit the farming community in particular, and gardeners, in June, was the combination of heat and low humidity. So we were seeing very, very unusually high evaporation rates. The evaporation rates for June, for instance, peaked at between 120 and 140 millimetres equivalent rainfall was lost just by evaporation.
So what's ahead for us?
So what's ahead? Indeed. Well, we're looking at the 3-month product from our colleagues at UK Met Office, and we look at that in detail. But the headline figures from that are there's only a 40% probability of near normal rainfall. There's about a 35% probability of below normal rainfall. And to be quite honest, even normal rainfall would not cut the mustard to help us out in this situation anymore. It would not replenish the water stock quickly enough. And the final outlier to that model for the August, September to October period was less than 20% probability of above average rainfall.
So that's a worry then. And has that forced the hand?
It has. I mean, this is the reason we brought this hosepipe ban in. As I said, the reservoirs at the moment have got water. I don't want to panic people or worry them unnecessarily, but we're not thinking about July or August. We're now looking forward to September, October, November, and saying we need to bring in some measures now to guarantee that we've still got a decent water supply later on in the year, because what we can't guarantee is normal weather as we get towards the end of the year. And I think that's the main take-home message, that what we need to do is conserve water now, to make those adjustments to our behaviour now, so that we're okay as we get into later on in the year.
Just dealing with the infrastructure then, and figures are out there that 20% of water supply is lost before it even makes it to the household in the north of England. What's the rate here?
We've got a much smaller leakage rate here. You always get a bit of leakage rate from the water mains. What Manx Utilities have been doing is refurbishing them over the last couple of decades. But we still do have leaks, and paradoxically our leaks have gone up recently because the ground is so dry. Then when cars go over it, when vehicles go over it, it's fracturing the pipes. So we're working really hard to fix any leaks, and normally we do that just for our own water mains, not for private mains. We're now expanding that. So anyone who has a leak for their water main, please get in contact with us. We'll do as much as we can to patch that up and sort that out.
So obviously it's domestic users, and let's underline that. Domestic users are banned from using a hosepipe. But I've seen posts where a family are saying, well, it's the summer holidays, we've got a paddling pool that the kids can play in. They're going to use the same amount of water if they do fill that with a bucket as they are with a hosepipe, aren't they?
But what I'd say to those families is go to some of our parks, go to Morag Park, use the water feature there. You know, it's there, it's up and running, it recycles the water it uses. you go have a bathe in the sea, obviously safely, because that's been an issue in the UK, and use some of the wonderful swimming pools we've got around the island. There's lots of other alternatives to get out and use the facilities that are laid on by local authorities and by the government.
What about businesses? Let's just deal with that, because there's been a little bit of confusion. Just down the hill here, there's a car wash. What are they? They can carry on as normal?
We're appealing to businesses, again, to join with this concerted campaign to try to use water responsibly. Quite a few industrial car washers recycle the water they use anyway, so they're not particularly wasteful. They know that because they're on water meters, they have to pay for it. So a lot of the car washers actually around the Douglas area and around the island are actually doing this already. But I think you're quite right. For those people who are running golf courses, for those people who are running big industrial plants which use a lot of water, we're saying, look, join in with the campaign, do what you can to make sure that the island doesn't run into problems later on in the year.
And I've also seen posts where people are saying, well, hang on, we pay an awful lot for our water rates, or the toilet tax as it got termed. We're not getting a service, why should we pay? It's paradoxical that in October I'm going to Tynwald with a new pricing regime for water and sewage, and trying to get this sorted out once and for all. What the water and sewage charges are paying for is the infrastructure. Solby Reservoir is pumping 19 million litres of water every day to West Baldwin. It's that infrastructure which costs massive amounts of money, which is why we're looking long term as opposed to panicking now. That money's been put into the infrastructure, and as I said, I don't want to panic anyone about water shortages, but we need to use that water responsibly. This is a 1 in 20 years event we're in at the moment, and we don't want to make the same mistakes as we did back in the 1970s. I'll bring Adrian in here because climate change, global warming, whichever term you want to put the headline on it, indicates that this might become more frequent this sort of summer.
Indeed, that is the consensus of the international studies by scientists, that this type of climate change effect has been well predicted, that we may see a warmer atmosphere generally in our part of the planet in particular, and that leads to the increased risk of summertime heat waves and droughts, and equally at the other end of the scale, an increased probability of more frequent and extreme winter storms events as well. So it may become closer to the new norm looking over the next few decades.
So we need to factor that in with future policy. And the island at the moment is seeing that the way to get out economically of a little hole that we might be in is to increase the population, build more houses. That's a bigger than ask on our water reserves, isn't it?
It is. I mean, government, as you know, have pledged to grow the active working population. What they're looking at is by hundreds or maybe 1,000 people a year. Our existing infrastructure can deal with that quite easily. What we're having problems with is this exceptional summer that we've got at the moment. But I think you're right. If we do grow the economy by several thousand more people, we're going to have to look at the infrastructure that we've got, not just for water, sewage and electricity, but also schools and roads. But this is I suppose,
but isn't it house design as well?
Well, it is. I mean, we're very, up until recently, we've been talking about energy efficient houses. Actually, you can have water efficient houses as well. You can collect rainwater and use it to water your garden. Back in the old days, people used to have butts to do just that, but they've gone out of fashion now because we've all got taps and houses don't have them. So what we need to do, I think you're quite right, is if this is the shape of things to come to a degree, look into the design of our houses, look at the design of our gardens as well, to make sure that they're water efficient as well as energy efficient.
1976, some will say, led to the Solby Reservoir being built for future stock of water. Which valley's getting flooded this time round?
A very good question. I mean, Solby Reservoir was a massive infrastructure investment, and it has worked. It's paying dividends now, which is why we've got time to make these changes instead of going for more drastic measures. I think what we'll need to do over the next decade is look at the long-term weather forecast, look at the way we deal with water, conserve as much as we can. But if we do get into the situation where this is becoming the norm, yes, we will have to invest in more infrastructure.
We've got a lot of water around the island. Desalination.
We do. Desalination plants have been used in some states, but particularly in the Middle East, where water is slightly more expensive even than Evian to get out of the tap. It is very, very energy intensive. It's a very expensive way, and I would say that actually by collecting the water that we get and using it more responsibly, we can avoid those sort of drastic measures that will push prices up significantly.